North Korea has rattled American nerves with the possibility of a nuclear missile capable of reaching the United States. A little false alarm in Hawaii in January didn't help much either. President Trump and North Korean President Kim Jong-un are supposed to meet by May with hopes of easing tensions. But the threat has also prompted concerns about America's missile defense system and what, after decades and hundreds of billions of tax dollars, we've gotten for the money. Scott Thuman reports.
The American people and the world should know that our nation is secure. Our nation's defenses from potential inbound missile attacks is the best in the world.
Vice President Mike Pence boasted about the U.S. missile defense system last month in Alaska, home of one of two missile bases on the West Coast. The other is in California.
These ground-fired interceptors are rockets, three-stage rockets that are tipped with a very complex thing called a kill vehicle. And so the kill vehicle will be boosted into the weightlessness of space by the rocket. It would separate, and the visual is not dissimilar from what we used to see with the old space program shots.
LA Times reporter David Willman has reported extensively on the so-called ground-based mid-course defense system, or GMD.
I think overall, since testing of these ground-fired interceptor rockets began, the overall scorecard is 9 for 18 attempted hit-to-kills. The record is 40% of the last 10.
40% doesn't pass in school.
Right.
How should it pass when we're talking about protecting the nation against a missile?
The danger here, Scott, is that if you have leakage, that's the terminology, if you have one or more of warheads that are getting through your defenses, you're going to lose Los Angeles, you're going to lose Seattle. I mean, so it's, in the event of such an attack, the stakes are enormous.
There's kind of a boutique subculture of hit-to-kill deniers that are a little bit out of the mainstream.
Thomas Carrico heads the Missile Defense Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank funded in part by some of the same companies involved in developing the missile systems.
I think it's important to emphasize that this has been a national priority on a bipartisan basis, that we ought to have, as technically feasible, some kind of a limited defense against these kinds of threats. As a country, we've said that. At the end of the day, this is just one other kind of military threat, and we want to have a spectrum of responses to it. We want to have offensive, diplomatic, and defensive ways to counter that threat.
The U.S. has spent $41 billion over the past 15 years on the GMD system, which is designed to protect the homeland from a missile launched by a rogue state, such as North Korea or Iran.
So then, in some respects, has this been a waste of taxpayer money?
I think that the money has been spent for an end product that has not delivered the result that was promised. I guess the one through line is that, and it's no surprise, but in the United States, fear is always perhaps the best motivator of policy. We see it over and over again.
But $40 billion for a missile defense system that works part of the time is an improvement over a plan from a long time ago in a conflict now far, far away that became known as Star Wars.
I hope we will one day develop a security shield that destroys weapons, not people.
The first response.
Officially called the Strategic Defense Initiative.
Intercepting enemy missiles as they are boosted through the atmosphere.
The space-based system was projected by critics to cost over $1 trillion for multi-layered defense, including lasers, particle beam weapons, and ground-based missiles. It was intended to create an impenetrable shield against Soviet missiles. Ultimately, over $30 billion was spent on a system that was never finished, never deployed, and never used to defend against attack. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. 2 years later, President Clinton pulled the plug on Star Wars. While the Cold War ended in the early 90s, the driving nuclear deterrent was known as mutually assured destruction. No nation with sufficient nuclear stockpiles is likely to launch on an opponent because the retaliation would mean total and assured destruction. Russian President Putin's ramped-up rhetoric and China's military expansion puts the old superpowers back in their Cold War places. But the new nuclear threats, the so-called rogue states, have also created a new challenge, and not just for the United States.
This is not something that is merely an American phenomenon, but really a global one. And so whether it's NATO, the Middle East, Asia Pacific, all kinds of allies and partners are investing real dollars and real significant portions of their scarce defense budgets in having some kind of counter to the various air and missile threats that are out there. I don't think that trend is going to go away anytime soon.
A lot of people would argue after spending some $40 billion just in the past 15 years that we should have a lot more confidence than hope.
A lot of treasure has been put into this system, and at this point in time, I wouldn't say with any degree of confidence that the public is getting what it had been told it was paying for.
Are there any plans to address that?
Well, the Trump administration is expected to unveil its missile defense review later this month, which reportedly will call for a more robust technology to defend against countries like Iran and North Korea. But it may also call for expanding capabilities against Russia and China for the first time since Reagan's Star Wars program ended 25 years ago.
All right. Thanks, Scott.